Hello and welcome to my winter themed TBR list. I've kept the categories pretty simple. I have middle grade, young adult, and adult. I will start with middle grade. So the first one I found in a little free library this fall, and that is First Light by Rebecca Stead. She is a Newbery Medal winner for When You Reach Me, and I don't know that much about this, but I chose it because I was trying to find the winter theme, and obviously with the huskies and the glaciers and the clothing, this is set in Greenland. There actually is some witchcraft and visions that the main character gets. So that one. Next is Bloomability by Sharon Creech. This one I also found in a little free library. She got the Newbery Medal for Walk Two Moons, which I've read. I also read Chasing Redbird. I really felt like Chasing Redbird was a lot like Walk Two Moons, so I'm interested to see if Bloomability feels similar to Walk Two Moons and Chasing Redbirds, or if this has a different feel entirely. But the main character, I think she goes kind of against her will to this boarding school in Switzerland, and she needs to either bloom or wilt in this new cold setting. Next is The Polar Bear Explorer Club, and this is by Alex Bell. So this is set in Iceland, and the main character goes and I think is on an exploration of some sort, and they get separated from their main crew. It talks about a pet polar bear and a unicorn, but it should be appropriately cold. And then last I have The Girl Who Speaks Bear. This is written by Sophie Anderson, who wrote The House with Chicken Legs. I have not read The House with Chicken Legs, but I have heard really great things about it. But since I'm doing winter themes, I went ahead, I'm gonna start with The Girl Who Speaks Bear. And it's the story about a girl who speaks bear and the challenges that that might naturally bring. So those are the 4 middle grade books that I have. Next we'll move to young adult. So I am hopefully going to read Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver. So Spinning Silver is a fantasy novel, and the main character is in a family where they are going further and further into debt. Her father is not collecting on debts, and so she decides she's going to kind of harden herself and start collecting debts. And I think her ability to collect the money owed to them is noticed by fae creatures who live in like this cold, icy environment. I think with the presence of fae, it is very fairy tale-like. With the myth, it feels a lot like King Midas. With the spinning silver part, it feels a lot like King Midas. So it is thick. It's almost 500 pages, so it is a hefty read. Next I have The Light Between Worlds by Laura Weymouth, and this is the story of during the bombing raids in London, 2 sisters managed to escape to this other world, and they eventually come back, but at some point one of the sisters goes missing, and so the other sister starts to wonder what happened to her and if it's related to their time in this other world. I chose this thinking that it was a kind of a cold winter book. It does talk about Christmas and cold weather, and so I think it will be appropriately winter themed. Next is The Sight by David Clement-Davies. I got this recommendation from Emmy here on YouTube, so I'll link her below. But this is the story about a wolf pack. One of the wolves gives birth to a baby, and this baby cub attracts the attention of Morgra, who is a lone wolf who wants the powers that this cub is supposed to have. But the pack that it's born into is a very protective pack, and so I think it's the battle that ensues for getting the powers that this cup has. This is also a chunker, 500, almost 500 pages. So that has chapters in it about ice storms and snow, so I think that will be a good fit. Next, I have The Bear and the Nightingale. This is a kind of like a Russian folk tale about a girl in Russia who is grown up hearing all of these stories about monsters and spirits, and then she moves into town with her father and stepmother, and she is no longer allowed to honor these household spirits and rituals. So I think the setting being in Russia is why I chose that one, because it also just looks really cold. I'm not gonna have enough room on my shelf for all my books. Next, I have Winter, which is the last one in the Lunar Chronicles. It's kind of hard to say because she's written other ones that are like kind of related and have different parts and pieces, but basically this is the last one in the Lunar Chronicles. I picked this up for the Lunar Along, and this was to be read for part of that in November, but I just really, with the theme of winter and finishing kind of my fall themed books, I went ahead and pushed this into a winter theme. So this is the story of Snow White basically retold with a person who is a lunar who lives on the moon, and she is connected up with Red Riding Hood and Cinderella, who is a cyborg. And so with this being the last one in the series, I really can't say much more than that. I will say Bear and Nightingale is not officially, I don't think, a young adult book, but from what I can tell, I think it can fall into that young adult category. I am also adding A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. She is a French writer. This is a series. This is the first book in the Mirror Visitor series. It is a YA story about a girl who is promised in marriage to someone who I think is pretty far away in a cold and icy location, and she starts to have to maneuver in this political world of arranged marriages and all of the ramifications with that. This is also an audio book on Scribd, and so I will probably do some hybrid version of listening to it as well as reading this. So for adult reads, I have The Winter Sea by Susan Kearsley. This is this chilly dual timeline setting in Scotland, romance and mystery. Okay, next I have Winter Garden by Kristin Hannak. This is also a dual timeline. I think that's what she does. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like every one of hers that I've read has been a dual timeline. So it's a mystery, and it kind of goes between Leningrad and Alaska, and so I think those two kind of cold settings fit perfectly in the winter theme. Not to mention the winter in the title, which brings me to the next one, which is The Winter Palace by Ava Stachniak. This is a historical novel about Catherine the Great. I have not read that much about Catherine the Great, but obviously the setting in Russia is a perfect setting for reading this as a winter theme. Next is Snowdrift and Other Stories by Georgette Hare. This is a recommendation that I got from Miranda Mills, who is a British booktuber. Georgette Hare is apparently dubbed the Queen of Regency Romance, and this has a collection of short stories that were originally published in the 60s, as well as 3 recently unearthed stories originally published in the 30s. So I figured I could pick and choose. If I don't want to read all of the short stories, maybe just read 1 or 2, depending on what strikes my fancy. And last is Rosamund Pilcher's Winter Solstice. I love Rosamund Pilcher's writing. Her kind of sweeping saga and family dramas are just perfect for sitting by a fire and drinking tea and reading a book. And so I have read this before. This would be a reread for me, but I love it so much. Reading it each year is just this kind of comfort blanket to me. So there you have it, my winter themed books that I am planning to read under hopefully the cover of a lot of snow and warm fires and cups of tea. Until next time.